Every government says they love small businesses, but what have they done for them? We should pull down all the barriers. That was a quote from Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba Group of China. Research reveals that over 50% of new businesses fail during the first 5 years, and the most effective way to support SMEs is by pairing financial support with advisory services. This is incredibly important as we near the end of Global Entrepreneurship Week. In addition, 600 million jobs will be needed by 2030 to absorb the growing global workforce, which makes SME development a high priority for many governments around the world. 90% of businesses worldwide are SMEs, according to the World Bank, and they account for more than 50% of employment. Global shocks and crises have disturbed the working environment for entrepreneurs and SMEs, making them extremely vulnerable to inflation, interest rates. So how do these businesses actually contribute to economic growth and sustainable development and job creation? Is big business the backbone of economic growth, or are small businesses really the engine room? What can we do to give them a fighting chance of success and longevity? Well, to help me make sense of this topic, I'm joined now by trained computer scientist Aramide Abe, founder of Niger Startups and Global Program Lead Jobs and Entrepreneurship at Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program. She holds an MBA from INSEAD University. Also joining me is Charles Odii, the DG and CEO of SMEDEN, the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria. Prior to this, he was the founder and ED of SME 100 Africa. He holds a degree in Management Information Systems. Great to have you both on the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to start with you, Charles. You've recently taken on a role at the helm of SMEDEN, the SME agency of Nigeria. What are going to be your main priorities in that role?
So thank you again for having me. First of all, let me congratulate all the entrepreneurs in Nigeria. This is Global Entrepreneurship Week. It's celebrated in 188 countries. Okay. In Nigeria, we have over 103 events that are spanned across pitch competitions, creative, women, youth, dialogue, and basically just the idea is just to celebrate entrepreneurship, innovation, and creativity in this month. Peddling back to your question, so what are my key focus? What am I looking at? First of all, I'm looking at using data to make informed decisions. Okay. So first of all, if you look at the statistics of small businesses, there are different statistics. So the World Bank is giving you one statistics, the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics is giving you another, and even PwC, one of their reports says that there are about 40 million small businesses. But where are these small businesses? What do they do? Where do they live? What are the problems they are faced with? What's the need that they currently have? I think that's what I really need to get, because the data is currently not available. So going into this role is actually to harness that data by doing like a small business census, like job mapping, geotagging the small businesses.
So technology is going to play a huge role in that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Because only when we get this information about where these businesses exist and the needs that they have, that we can start to formulate interventions for them. We can start to help with technology, knowledge, resources, building a community around the data that we harness. So data is going to play a very key role, and data is what we're going to use to actually transform small business development in Nigeria.
In fact, data, we say, is a new currency. Now, Aramide, you are founder of Niger Startups. It's an incredible platform that has reached thousands of entrepreneurs, and you hear their pain points every day from an economic and business perspective. In this current VUCA world, as we say, volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous, what are the current pain points of many SMEs and small business owners in Nigeria?
Thanks, Faraka, and thanks for having me again, and happy Global Entrepreneurship Week to all the SMEs. Yes, I have engaged with tons of SMEs over the last few years, and there are some very consistent, concurrent problems. I think I'll start with the current situation in the economy. I think the FX volatility doesn't help businesses, just in terms of the cost and cash flow and, purchasing. So that's quite one of the critical ones. Another one is the enabling environment. I think that's consistent across different countries in any case, so it's not just limited to Nigeria, but that's something that businesses need to thrive. And so the more we can support businesses to, have policies in place and awareness of those policies and, the tax reforms and all, that helps. The third, which is typically one of the ones that people talk about the most, is access to capital, where, when you don't have that funding.
But is it really access to capital that's a problem?
It's yes and no, actually, because, again, capital may not be what you need, but it doesn't mean that there isn't a dearth of capital. Okay. We do need the inflow and the injection, especially, and even more so women businesses as well. And then talent. Talent has been an ongoing, issue with businesses, just finding the right talent. We have a global exodus right now, mass exodus right now. So retaining talent, sourcing and finding good talent is another challenge. But I know that we'll talk more about how there are initiatives to help upskill youth and staff. So we're hopeful about that.
Yeah, indeed. And Charles, I've lost count of the number of initiatives from a government perspective, MSMEs, financing, access to credit, institutions like the BOI are doing that. And many of these policies have been on for years. Yeah. Now, what is SMED and your organization going to do to address this funding gap, which many believe is a major challenge for SMEs being able to scale? What practical or tangible solutions actually exist?
Okay, so first of all, like I said, there are lots of interventions. One of the things we're going to do as an agency is to congregate all of it. So there's funding for climate that Aramide leads at the Africa Development Bank. There's funding for green energy. There's funding for women businesses. What we're going to do as an agency is aggregate all this funding to a place where everyone can see there's a panoramic view of where this funding is, and then we can help some of the people apply for the funding. And then in other cases, we just make the information available. One thing that's very prevalent is that government is doing a couple of things, a lot of things as a matter of fact. But what has happened is that the information dissemination has been the problem. Yeah. Cascading this information to the people that actually need this has been the problem. So one of the things we're also going to do is continue to do what we've started to do, town hall engagement, meeting with the small businesses, hearing their pain points, listening to their voices, trying to wear their shoes and understanding that their pain points, because when we understand the pain point, that's only when then we can solve it. So we won't just sit in our offices and try to formulate policies, but also being on the field, understanding what is necessary so that when we're formulating policies to address the problems. What we're also doing is also trying to democratize access to finance.
Okay. How will that work?
We just announced two weeks ago a 1 billion naira loan portfolio for small businesses in the southeastern part of Nigeria, and I'm proud to be specific. But in a few days from now, we'll be announcing a 5 billion naira single-digit interest rate loan for small businesses. Okay. Because capital is scarce. Capital is also very expensive. So I say to small businesses, wherever you see the money, go for the money. But again, many of the capital streams that they see is not readily available to them. And so what we're trying to do is also remove all the bureaucracies that make the money not come to the small businesses. Yeah. We're going to do this systematically, and then as a matter of track the businesses that are collecting financing, and also help them to get more business. And
will information on the loans be on your website? Because people often complain generally for a lot of these funding schemes is like, they always ask who actually gets the money.
Yes.
Right? So how will small businesses know where to go and find the funding?
So we're going to make the information available, not just on our website, but also a lot of partners that we're going to be working with.
So these are banks or
These are banks who are partners, our business development service providers, and also some other partners, associations and institutions that we'll be working with. We'll make the information readily available to them, and then maybe I'll come back here in another 3 months and I can tell you categorically how many people were funded, how many people are in the pipeline of accessing funds, and how many people are going to get funds in the nearest future.
Do you have a target for how many SMEs you want to reach out of this funding scheme?
So if we look at the bigger problem, you had said that 80% of small businesses die. The one problem that these small businesses face is, in one word, is called structure. So they're lending institutions. The banks want to give the small business money, but the problem is that these small businesses are not structured enough to receive money. Okay. I use the bucket and the basket analogy. Many of our small businesses, are baskets. If you put the money into the businesses, the money finds the way out. So we're working with a couple of partners to make sure that they're structured. So take them from the basket they are and make them like buckets.
And so how many of the small businesses are you looking at? 1 million, 2 million?
1 million, 1 million.
Over the course
of another 3 to 4 years. 1 million businesses, we want to work to better structure them so that they can access funding and try and get them to at least employ 5 people each. So in another 5 years, we're looking at creating 5 million jobs.
Fantastic. I will hold you to that, because when you come on the show, we'll be asking about that. Now, Aramide, I want to talk about an issue that's maybe potentially controversial. Now, there are some people who argue that the drivers of economic growth are really big businesses, like Dangotes and whoever. But a lot of the stats and institutions, World Bank, AFDB, they always point to small businesses as driving job creation. This job creation we're talking about, what exactly it is? Are small businesses really creating large scale unemployment? And I think that's where that whole argument between business and small business comes in.
Yeah, great question. I would say yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if there were tons more small businesses and they could employ, like he mentioned, 5 people each. And so then there's that effect, right? But of course, no, because like you mentioned, the larger industries are the ones who have the capacity to employ as much talent as they can. Even then, it's not as much, but you know what I mean. So the key thing then is going back to policies, framework, enabling environment,
Right.
Skills for employability, because then again, there's people who just aren't employable. And so what do we need to do there? It's really, injecting and upskilling these youth and young people to become employable. I know there's tons of initiatives, and I was mentioning, there's the 3MTT one that has just been announced, where there's tech talent going to be upskilled, and then that allows them to be placed in organizations. So on the back of that, there's also the notion of, okay, if you have tons of factories, then you can employ more people. And that's to say that we can look at sectors like agriculture. What are we doing there? How can we expand on that? How can we even have people in smallholder farming begin to be able to work and hire other people? So there are opportunities, but I guess my answer to you is 50-50 in the sense that yes and no.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me be clear.
Sure, please.
Small businesses are the drivers of serious
You would
economy.
say that. You're the CEO of the small business agency.
No. So I will tell you this. So if you look at all the businesses, let's say there are 100 businesses in Nigeria, 96% of the businesses in Nigeria are small businesses.
So when we even say small, are we talking about the number of employees or maybe their turnover?
So we'll come to, now we're talking about the economy. So there are 3 major metrics. Number of employees, turnover, and property assets, right?
Yes.
But in terms of their contribution to the economy, let's be clear. And that's why, I applaud the president for actually not paying lip service to the fate of small businesses in the country. Because he contributes at least to approximately 60 million jobs small businesses provide to the economy. The GDP, approximately 50% of our GDP is provided by small businesses. Yeah. But the problem is our manufacturing output, which is low, about 10%, and then our export, which is about 7%.
Of course. So we need to remove the barriers for small businesses.
Yes, we remove the barriers, but they are the driving force of any serious economy. The Dangotes and the Cadburys and the MTNs are just about 4% of Nigeria's economy. So it's small business. Okay. Let's be clear, small businesses. Yeah. So let us all help, join hands to make sure that we build these small businesses. Yeah. And it's not just government alone. Like she like you mentioned, she has Nigeria startups. She's working in development space. We all have to join hands to make sure that we can grow this small business.
I mean, you make a very good case there, and thanks for bringing clarity. So Aramide, we can't ignore the fact that there are some broad global trends that are happening that affect everybody, big business, small business. There's no company that doesn't have to deal with the FX issue. So in terms of what you see on the horizon as things, how small businesses can even manage risk, what are some of those global headwinds that we all need to kind of just track and monitor? Because all these great initiatives like access to finance may not ultimately fly if we don't know how to manage our exposure to global economic shocks.
Absolutely. So, I mean, they're the trends that we know, things like, of course, the advancement of technology, how AI has just taken off and disrupted everything. It will take away some jobs, but it has created tons more jobs. So that's something we need to continue to look at as we establish economic growth through small businesses in Nigeria and Africa. Also, the way that the work environment has also changed post the pandemic, right? And so small businesses need to adapt to that, right? It's not to say that, of course, if you have a small, maybe takeaway business, you don't need your staff to come in. But of course, then you need to adapt for maybe your back office operations, and that allows you to even reduce your costs at the same time. So those are the 2 that really stand out for me in terms of the trends. And just the fact that there's so much, the borders are just disappearing, right? And so we find people here working in Australia, and they're based here. And so even for us as business owners, we can begin to look at how we can just open up our borders. It allows us even for trade and all those things. So I think those are the 3 ones that really stand out.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the sort of borderless world, because apart from finance, small businesses occasionally cite access to markets as part of the challenge. And we know that with Africa Continental Free Trade Area, the digitization, that the world has really shrunk in a sense. So maybe can you talk about the impact of technology on small businesses and innovation? Because a lot of these technology trends are like double-edged swords. You know, we talked about AI. which allows us to do some things easier and more efficient and faster, but may also replace jobs. How is the impact of technology going to shape the type of work you do?
I mean, I think every small business should leverage technology. I mean, I can't overemphasize that, because if you take, for instance, a small business located here where we are recording, if you're a small business owner and you've opened shop here, you're only privy to everyone who passes in front of your shop. But if you leverage technology for business growth, what it means is that you can sell to almost anyone, anywhere, wherever they are, with just a click of a button. So I think that technology is the driving force and will drive technology and will drive small business growth and commerce. But also, just pedaling back to the Africa Free Trade Zone agreement, I think one of the things we need to do for that is, first of all, democratize access.
Okay. To markets.
Access to markets, yes. We can't be talking about Africa Free Trade without me being able to get my products into the African countries. So I've just come from the Africa Free Trade Zone and Africa Trade Fair. I've just come from the Africa
the Egypt
Trade
one.
The one in Egypt.
ITF.
At SMEs, we sponsored some businesses to go for that trade fair, right? Over a dozen businesses. And what we've done is, we helped with paying for the booths. We helped with, even selecting the businesses. And what we did as an agency was get the goods together so that we can ship it ahead of the businesses, the small business owners going there. What happened was the products got to Egypt, and the business owners were denied visa.
Oh, wow.
So you had products in Egypt where the business owners couldn't get visas.
Did it help to show evidence of products getting there to aid the visa process?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so, which was first why I was furious at the Intra-Africa Trade Fair. We can't be talking about Africa trade and you are blocking Nigerians from coming to do business in your country. I applaud Rwanda, I applaud Kenya, for opening their borders for all of the Africans. That's the beginning, access, democratizing that access is the beginning for trade. So it's discombobulating that we're talking about this at this time that Africans are not thinking about access, intra-Africa access for Africans themselves. As a Nigerian, first of all, going to Egypt, I'm not going to play, I'm going to do business. And I could show, and I've applied for visas. Right? My products are ready in Egypt, waiting for me to go and sell and exhibit and foster healthy business relationships. And then I get denied visas.
Yeah.
So that's
these are the real issues. These are the pain points. And you can't talk about trade and business in Africa without also talking about politics. Unfortunately, we can't go into that. But a lot of these things, we know they have broader diplomatic and political angles. But also it just highlights how much governments need to do at a multilateral level to put their weight and support behind these things. I mean, you've worked for the AFDB and all this. What do you have to say to that?
I was even going to say, on my other hat, I was just in a meeting with the coordinator of the AFCFTA this morning, and he was sharing what their plans are in terms of engaging all the different sort of like MDAs that link into sort of trade for enterprises. So there's a lot to look forward to in the coming year. I'll allow him to speak to his plans when he's ready to sort of speak to that. But in terms of just multilateral engagement, I think, yes, one of the things, without talking to politics, is the partnerships and the coordination within the economy, right? The different agencies need to sort of align vis-a-vis policies and whatever initiatives there are. Sometimes there's a mismatch. We know there's trade, and the next thing there's an issue with visas. But at the same time, on the other side, are we allowing businesses to come in? So there's that reciprocal effect as well that we have to look at. So there's quite a bit of coordination and organization that needs to happen. It's not that the initiatives aren't there or the funding isn't even with these multilateral partners and organizations, but it's that coordination that we can probably do better within the nation.
Yeah, I know, and we need these governments to throw their weight behind these initiatives a lot more.
Absolutely.
Well, let's move to a lighter note because we're about to wrap up. So if you look at all the sectors, we talked about tech, which sectors are you really excited for SMEs to play? The sectors of the future. Can you give me sort of your 2 or 3 top sectors that you think are really going to be a big opportunity for even startups and entrepreneurs who want to build businesses to go into? I'll start with you, Charles.
So I'm excited about the creative and digital sector.
Okay.
And, when we talk about products, small business products, everyone talks about what we can feel, touch, but there are a lot of digital products.
Okay.
Like apps, podcasts, all of those kind of things that are going to come out of us as an agency are going to help small businesses create. And our creative sector, our fashion, our music, our arts, I'm excited to the job creation that will happen in that sector and in the future of that sector.
Yeah, fantastic. I presume we're working a lot with the Minister, Hannatu Musawa, the creative culture minister, as well on that.
Absolutely.
Aramide, what about you?
Interestingly, and maybe not the most popular, but has the most potential, is agriculture.
Okay.
There's just so much. It's almost like we're leaving billions of dollars on the table, not tapping into that. And I can understand, because the youth, they realize, they see farming as it's not enticing. Their parents weren't making money from it. But if we could get our value chains in place, there's just so much money we can make from processing, smallholder farming. It's huge, and that's where the billionaires will come from in the next 5-10 years if we organize properly.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And I'd love to see collaboration as well between SMED and your agency on the government side, and Niger Startups, which works with a lot of private sector entrepreneurs. An African Development Bank. I know that would be a whole nother conversation, but really love the work you're both doing in the public and private sector space. Hopefully more partnerships. Thanks again for being on the show, Charles Odii, CEO of SMED, and Aramide Abe, founder of Niger Startups.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, that's all we have time for today on Business Week. We can continue the conversation on X. Do find me there. Have a lovely weekend ahead. I'm Brella K. Akinkwefalani. I'll see you soon.